I want to take you through a couple of case studies. One is Salesforce and one is Microsoft, and give you a feeling of how this has played out. And it's played out very, very differently in the two companies. And the reason for that is that Salesforce is a $5 billion company going to $10 billion. It's actually well past 5 now. But the point is, it's on an arc from 5 to 10 to potentially 20. It is actively seeking to add the next row to its performance matrix. Microsoft is a $100 billion company, which isn't actively seeking to add a row. All of its rows are under attack. And so what we're going to see is Salesforce is going to play a version of the 4 zones we call zone offense, and Microsoft's going to play a version we're going to call zone defense. And here's how it plays out. So thinking about zone offense first. So the zone offense idea begins with, we think we found a star in our incubation zone. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to bring it into the transformation zone. What that literally means is the general manager of that independent operating unit, which is probably 1 to 2% of total revenue, is going to be made a row member in the performance matrix with full support from all the channels, all the sales channels, even though it is dramatically subscale. Well, you can't ask the performance matrix to do that. That's not, we just said it's not designed to do that. So this is why the CEO has to intervene and say, yes, normally we would never do this. This is the exception. This is what we're going to do. And this business, making this business go from 1 to 10% of our total revenue, getting it to scale, getting it through the tipping point, is the #1 priority of our corporation for every single employee in our corporation. Not just for the team that's doing it, not just for the division or the whole the business unit that hosts it, for everybody in the organization. It is the #1 priority. Having said that, very close behind is #2 priority, which is we would like to make the fiscal plan. But one of the things that will happen during this journey is it's quite likely that the head of the performance zone, particularly the head of sales, will come to the CEO at some point and say, well, I think we're going to miss our number if we're not careful here. I think I need to pull back some of the resources from the transformation zone in order to make our number. You do want me to make our number. And by the way, what most CEOs have said is, yes, we'll have to figure out how to make that work. That turns out to be the wrong answer. The correct answer is, yes, I do want you to make your number, but you may not pull back any resources from the transformation. And the reason for that is, once you've started a transformation zone initiative, you must see it through to completion. When you stop halfway through, all you get is very, very bad outcomes on every front. The market loses confidence in you. You've spent a lot of money that you get no return from. You've demoralized your performance zone. It's just a bad outcome. So even if you have to miss your number to make it through the transformation, it is more important. And by the way, once you get through the transformation, all is forgiven. But there can be a very, very brutal time if you do miss your numbers, because the public markets are very, very punitive when you do that. And you could even put your company in play by having your stock price go down to a point where your company's now an acquisition target, but you must see the transformation through. In that context, the productivity zone becomes the 3rd priority, just for every piece of help it can give to the performance zone, so that the performance zone can do its very, very best to make the numbers, given the constraints of its primary support for the transformation. And frankly, the incubation zone is the low man on the totem pole. And so when you look at this model, basically what you're putting together is a world where it's transformation first, performance zone second, productivity zone third, and incubation zone, guys, you're gonna have to go on a prolonged diet. So everyone's enlisted in scaling the new business. By the way, from a compensation point of view, what that should mean is every executive in the company should have their primary discretionary compensation depend on whether this business gets to scale or not. Now the good news is stock options and restricted stock units work very well here, because if this thing gets to scale, the market will revalue your company. But what's important is what you don't want to allow to happen is to have somebody in the company win locally with their compensation program at the expense of the transformation. You never want to incent that behavior, and most compensation programs unfortunately do. Now let's go to zone defense. So that was zone offense. That was Salesforce adding, the Force.com to their matrix, adding Marketing Cloud to their matrix. Now they're looking to add, community and Internet of Things and analytics to their matrix. They've got a very ambitious sort of pipeline of things to go after, and they are proactively looking for the opportunity to insert the next big thing into the transformation zone. Microsoft encountered a very different problem. Arguably the most successful company ever in high tech. It had three anchor franchises: the Windows operating system, which had ubiquity everywhere at the edge; the Office productivity system, which wherever you had Windows you wanted to have Office; and the back office things of SQL Server and Business Server, and a whole raft of back office capabilities, all of which ran on-premise or on-device. Well, what happened in this century is the mobile device displaced Windows with iOS and Android at the edge. So that now Windows is a relatively small percentage of the total number of edge devices that interact with the cloud and interact with global computing. So as a result, Microsoft can no longer claim that you have to have Windows everywhere. And then that puts Office at risk, and Office is put more at risk by the fact that Google Apps, which competes directly with it, is typically given away for free, at least certainly at the low end it's given away for free. And it has a very collaborative infrastructure, which has been a challenge for Office. And then finally, the back office material, which was all very profitable, but it was all on-premise, the cloud itself disintermediates that. So here you had a situation where Satya inherits a company where all three of the performance zone sort of key engines are under a direct attack from a disruptive innovator. So the problem he has to solve is, I'm under attack in the performance zone. If I just leave the business in the performance zone, if I leave it with its existing metrics and its existing programs and systems, and particularly its existing compensation programs, I will for a while continue to make money, but I will not respond to the existential threat of these challenges, because you can't do that in the performance zone and make your numbers go. It's just not. People don't budget that way. It's not allocated that way. The personnel are not even the right personnel to do that. So what they've done instead is they've said, we're going to take a row in the performance matrix that's under attack, and we're going to bring it into the transformation zone, and we're going to transform it. The first one they did was their back office business. So they took the back office business and they said, we're going to go from on-premise to the cloud, and we're going to make Azure our number one bet for the back office. And in doing that, we're going to push Azure into the marketplace and send our sales force to sell it over and above the back office thing, even though the back office is more lucrative, better margins, easier to make the number. We're saying, yeah, I know, but this is a transformation. So with Satya, cloud first, mobile first, and actually Ballmer supported this when Satya was running the back office. They pushed Azure out, and Azure is now successfully resuscitated and rehabilitated, and then they can put it back into the performance zone. Now, the second one is Office. So Office, again, when Satya took over, he turned to Qi Lu, who was he put him in charge of the Office, and he said, the key to Office is mobile first, cloud first. And she said, great, I have no product that's mobile and no product that's cloud, but we'll make this work. So Office 365 became the engine that pulls the Office franchise forward. Again, not as profitable to sell as Office on devices, but again, it is the strategic place to be, and so put all the emphasis there. And now Office 365 is arguably, I'm not sure if it's completely back in the performance zone or not, but it certainly is, it has well past the tipping point, and that's going to go back in the performance zone, and then Windows will be next. Now when you do that, when you pull somebody out of the performance zone and bring them into the transformation zone, the next priority is actually to go into your incubation zone and say, do we have anything in the incubation zone right now which can help us accelerate this? Or can we do an acquisition in the incubation zone that will help us accelerate this? Microsoft very quickly got onto mobile with their Office, but they did it through acquisitions. Now they're internalizing that acquisition and they're making it compliant with all the rest of their infrastructure. But they did it quickly through the incubation zone, and you just jam it in to the transformation because speed really, really counts. And then the performance zone is always there. You can never neglect the performance zone. And in this case, the productivity zone ends up being the fourth one being emphasized, because the incubation zone, it's so important to go into there and say, guys, I know you were thinking about building the next big thing, and it wasn't in response to an attack on Office or an attack on our back office or attack on Windows, but we need to take whatever it is you have that can help us, and we're just going to steal it from you. Okay? So that's how that plays out. So again, you're enlisting everyone in the company in stabilizing the current business, and that's a transformational outcome that you need to achieve. And again, 2 years is a about all the time that the public markets will give you before they start to begin to question your competence. Finally, there are times when it's not this year. In other words, it's not this year that we have an innovation we're going to take to scale, and it's not this year that one of our franchise rows in the performance matrix is under attack. So in other words, this is business as usual. By the way, if I said you had to do one of these every 10 years, this might be 7 or 8 out of every 10 years. So this is the normal situation. In the normal running of a large enterprise, the performance zone always comes first. Everybody else in the company works for the performance zone. The productivity zone comes next in support of the performance zone, and the incubation zone comes third, creating options for the future. And there is no transformation zone priority because we're not transforming this year. And so you build the company around the other, what we would call the 3 permanent zones, and that's a very, very healthy thing. And by the way, the incubation zone can feed innovation directly into the performance zone, directly into the productivity zone. We can have a very, very successful year, a very, very successful run of years, essentially harvesting the rewards and building up our reserves. And this is what public markets understand. This is what public markets want to see. And if you're not in this state more than half the time, you're going to have investor crisis of confidence, because you should be in this state most of the time. The problem that the 54 companies had is they couldn't get out of this state anytime. So the transformation zone, you have to be able to activate it. But the notion that you're supposed to transform all the time is a mistake.